So nice to be here with everyone. Thank you for having us here. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence.
Yes, and as always, thank you, Bhakti Center devotees and everyone that's visiting the Bhakti Center. This is one of our favorite spots. It's the Bhakti Center early mornings. So as always, this is my choice. That I read the verse. This is my Ekavira's choice that I read the verse and then he starts speaking. So I'll start by reading the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naranam Naraskrityam Naranchayam Narotamam Devam Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mahuraya Nasta Parashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naistiki Hari Hari Bol. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 1, and the verse is right here. So I'm going to chant this verse. Shishuka Vacha Sayitamacharam Kaman Shaino Apalavam Atmanaha Bhutva Priyayai Nirvino Gatame Tamagayata Agayata. Srila Prabhupada's translation. Shukadev Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, Gayati was very much attached to women. In due course of time, however, when disgusted with sexual enjoyment and its bad effects, he renounced his way of life and narrated the following story to his beloved wife. Then there's another verse. Yes, Bhagavatam 9:19-2. Shrinu Bhargava Amun Gatam Madvidha Charitam Bhuvi Dirayashya Nutso Chanti Vanigrame Navashinaha. Srila Prabhupada's translation. My dearly beloved wife, daughter of Shukacharya, in this world there was someone exactly like me. Please listen as I narrate the history of his life. By hearing about the life of such a householder, those who have retired from householder life always lament. Srila Prabhupada's translation. Persons who live in the village or town are called Gram Nivasi, and those who live in the forest are called Vanavasi or Vanaprastha. The Vanaprasthas who have retired from family life generally lament about their past family life because it engaged them in trying to fulfill lusty desires. Prahlad Maharaj said that one should retire from family life as soon as possible, and he described family life as the darkest well. Hittatma patam griham adha kupam, famous verse. If one continuously or permanently concentrate on living with his family, he should be understood to be killing himself. In the Vedic civilization, therefore, it is recommended that one retire from family life at the end of his 50th year and go to Vana, the forest. When he becomes expert or accustomed to forest life or retired life as a Vanaprastha, he should accept sannyas. Vanam gato ya darim ashrayate. Ashrayata. Sannyas means accepting unalloyed engagement in the service of the Lord. Vedic civilization therefore recommends 4 different stages of life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. One should be very much ashamed of remaining a householder and not promoting oneself to the higher stages, namely vanaprastha and sannyasa. Okay, Om Ganati Randasya Ganagana Shalakaya Jakshomalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarabhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Raghunatam Shri Vishakam Vidamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah
Jai Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pacharane, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasatyade Pacharane. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shatatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Padam Hare Krishna Hari Bol Eka.
Hari. Oh, this is one of those hot potato verses.
Yeah. We love these verses.
Hari Bol.
Especially if you're a Grihasta.
Hari Krishna. Hari Bol.
Jai everyone. Hari Hari. Henry's here with us.
Henry's here too. Wonderful.
Jai, Susan.
Susan,
Hari
you,
Krishna.
my friend. Right. So yes, Yati and his beloved wife. This particular verse, where Srila Prabhupada is expressing that first point that when one retires from family life, generally lament. They generally lament in their past family. I'm reading.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let me pull it up. Okay, here we go.
Generally lament about their past family life because it engaged them in trying to fulfill lusty desires. And this is an important point where he starts out, and he actually kind of like ends on this particular point also. In this particular case, Yayati is expressing this lamentation. And we all know the story. Yayati is enjoying for 1,000 years and engaging in his family life. And it's almost like the epitome. Hyperbole is an exaggerated example of how when we focus on our own particular sense gratification, it can go so far, so much that we want to enjoy that we ask others to actually assist us by giving their own very lives. You know, he asked his youngest son to give his youth so that he could continue in this material enjoyment. And that's like the epitome of selfishness. And so Yayati is at this point in time is expressing this lamentation. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one of his prayers, he expresses that particular mood. My dear Lord, I've gone through many different phases of life. I've engaged in this Grihastha ashram, and I have not spent my life worshiping you. And so this is a very important verse for all of us because it exemplifies a very important aspect of our growth in Krishna consciousness, and that is introspection. I remember on one particular occasion with Srila Prabhupada was in, I believe it was Chicago, and one reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, they said, what's the if you had to say one thing that was attributed to your success, what would it be? And Srila Prabhupada He got quiet, and he said it would be, I was always introspective. And so taking everything that we experience in our lives as a process to assist us in our growth in Krishna consciousness is a very important aspect. And this is reflected in Yayati's introspection at this point in time. And so he's expressing that and then he talks about being there's, what did he say? There was I'm going to express this story of someone, yes. Of someone who's, what was it? I forgot the actual word.
Yeah, he said persons in the, okay. My dad's, I narrated.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah,
in this world, there was someone exactly like me. And this is a wonderful way of expressing that, well, who is exactly like me? Me. And so he's expressing this. And sometimes, we hear persons say, I have a friend, when they want to tell their own personal story. I have a friend, and then they go into it. And he's saying that I want to express this about a person that's exactly like me. And he just shares so much about she-goats and he-goats, and how this he-goat was attracted to the she-goat, and expressing how, again, engaged in hyperbole, showing how this particular propensity is something that's enjoyed, the attraction for, a sense gratification to its fullest extent, and sexual desire, and how that's something that's appreciated and enjoyed in all phases of, or all species of life. And so how Srila Prabhupada also cites this example of Prahlad Maharaj, expressing that this is family life is described as the darkest well. And this is one verse that really, really has been used a lot throughout, our experience. And it sometimes brings up many different feelings. And this is also the grace of the great souls. Prahlad Maharaj being one of the Mahajans, and we are encouraged to follow in the footsteps of these great souls. He's engaging in this action, which is shaking us, shaking us. And if we become disturbed by this particular verse, then we can engage in what Yayati is engaging in now, and that's introspection. And to see why this is actually causing some dissonance or some disturbance. The great souls actually understand, and following in the footsteps of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita with Arjuna, it's important to actually, if we want to change a concept, the great souls understand that it's important to totally shake us to our core in order to be free of this particular concept that we have, mental concept, and it's called cognitive dissonance. And so it's important for us to actually release this concept. Like Srila Prabhupada, just in one simple basic concept, he shakes so many people to their core. It shook me to the core when I first heard it. And it's so simple. You're not this body. Like, what are we talking about? You're not this body. I am this body. And this is a concept that many people throughout the world actually have. And much of the challenges throughout the world could be solved just by trying to understand this concept, what to speak of realizing this concept. And so this is the situation that Yayati is trying to express. He was attached to this particular body. He thought he was this particular body, and he wanted to enjoy through the embassy of this particular body. And so there's a story of Kailash and Narada Muni. Of course, we all may know this narration, but some of us may not be familiar with. And Narada Muni had this disciple, Kailash, and he went to see his disciple, and Kailash was there, and Narada Muni was saying, come join me. Kailash was engaged in his grihastha life. And so Kailash said, no, I have so many responsibilities here now. My children are growing up, and I have to care for them. So Narada left. He came back and asked Kailash to come with him. He said, well, I have grandchildren to care for, and I can't go with you. And Narada left, and he came back, and Kailash, unfortunately, Narada came, and he had died. And as Narada Muni was leaving the household, he saw this dog barking, and the dog barked, and he understood that the dog was communicating with Narada Muni. He said, hey, I'm Kailash. And he said, Kailash, what are you doing in this dog's body? And he had degraded into a lower species of life because of his particular attachment to household and the environment that he was in. And so he said, well, come, it's not too late. Come with me. He said, no, I have to protect my household. There's so many thieves and rogues coming around, and I'm here to bark and keep away the thieves and rogues. And so Narada left, and he came back, and the dog had died. And he said, Kailash, he was so concerned about Kailash. And as he was walking through the field, he saw the snakes hissing, and through the snake hissing, he communicated to Narada, hey, I'm Kailash. And he said, Kailash, you've degraded to a snake's body. Come with me. You're still not too late. Kailash said, no, I have to protect the fields. They, provide for my family. And Narada Muni just got disgusted. And he called the sons of Kailash and said, hey, this is a huge snake in your yard. It's very dangerous. And when the sons saw the snake, which was Kailash, they started to beat him. Kailash was trying to communicate, hey, I'm Kailash, I'm your father. And they eventually killed him. And while they were liberating him from his body, Kailash looked upon Narada and remembered the Supreme Lord. And fortunately, by the grace of Narada Muni, he was actually relieved from this particular suffering condition. And so this was a particular story to illustrate how we can actually become so attached to a particular environment that we can remain in the samsara and going not only not going up in our progressive understanding and reality and achieving another human form in the household of a Vaishnava, but we can actually go down into other species of life and then continue to suffer.
Yeah.
Yes. What do you have to say about that?
So I'm thinking, wow, I'm hearing you share about, Kailash and how degraded he was, and and I'm thinking, okay, wait. What about us living this actual principle that's being taught here, which Prabhupada is sharing about in this pastime, beautiful pastime. About the importance of the ashrams, and specifically the importance of the Vanapras ashram. And, the thing that I have learned over the years, we both have learned, all of us, I'm sure, over the years, we learned that there's always, two ways of looking at something. We can make a choice, right? Which way we want to internalize how we read the scriptures and how we actually live the scriptures. And Srila Prabhupada, as Ekavira Prabhu said, is so expert in cognitive dissonance. He's so expert where he can kind of take you all over your mind, can take a person's mind all over the place on any given topic. And so this one is, of course, it's been a topic for ISKCON devotees for many, many years, just trying to understand the Vanapras ashram, which it's one of the first principle is that, there are these ashrams, and these ashrams are created by Krishna himself. And so what does that mean to have an ashram? What is an ashram really? So Prabhupada, he says, Grihastha is also an ashram. It's a place where you actually practice how to develop love of God and how to become free from the material incumbents that we face every day as conditioned souls. He also expressed that it's as good as sannyas ashram. And Prabhupada said, you can accept any ashram that's suitable for you. But ashram means cultivation of spiritual knowledge. That's what an ashram actually means. And that is the difference between ashram and ordinary household life. So Ekavira Prabhu was helping us to understand more about what ordinary household life, the results of what happens when we live an ordinary household life. And I believe most of us that have been in, relationships prior to becoming devotees, we can understand that it's very difficult, to be in those relationships. What to speak of being becoming persons that are practicing spiritual life and still having all those material desires. It is very difficult. So Prabhupada expressed this in a room conversation that he wants us to understand the ashrams, and the Grihastha ashram specifically is for a purpose. So we know that the purpose is for procreation, and we know that the purpose is for service to each other, and also ultimately to serve others in the process of Krishna consciousness, to help bring other people to understanding this beautiful process of bhakti yoga. That's the purpose of Grihastha life. And of course, raising children. And then when that's over, which it gets over, it's just, I think this word simplicity, to simplify this whole verse, really it's a matter of consciousness, just to simplify the verse, because we get caught, in words oftentimes, and words can be piercing. And so there's some words here that perhaps in 1979, when I joined Krishna consciousness, it may not have impacted me in the same way as it impacts me now when I read the scriptures. So for example, in 1979, when I heard, to be ashamed of being in the Grihastha, of not accepting Vanaprast or sannyas, to me it was natural. Yeah, you're supposed to. That's the process. You get to a point where you become Vanaprast, or, you become renounced as Grihasthas, even though Vanaprast is a form of renunciation also. And actually all the ashrams are forms of renunciation. And so, the words may not have affected me, in the same way, because there was, just in terms of our socialization, our society in general have changed. And words that were used 20, 30, 40 years ago may not have the same impact on people as it does today. So this word ashamed, for example, Prabhupada uses this word. One must be ashamed if they don't, he's ashamed. He's ashamed because he, had not given up this attachment that he had to sense gratification, yayati. So Prabhupada uses this word. One will be ashamed if they don't come to this place of understanding Vanaprast and sannyas. Yes, that word, it can really trigger different emotions in people today as we socialize in understanding words and their impact on people. So today, in our time, we may not necessarily use that word if we're trying to cultivate someone in Krishna consciousness. We may use another word, right? So here he's explaining, he's doing this cognitive dissonance, using this word to shake us. Some of us will get disturbed. Some of us will want to know, what does that mean? Some of us will wow, how do I process this in terms of being ashamed? And so it's important for us to be grounded in our understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And it's important for us to be grounded in understanding Vedic civilization. Vedic civilization, Prabhupada has told us, has given us opportunities in how we can progress towards genuine loving of Krishna, which does mean giving up certain things. And we all know that. We're all aware of that. If we want to love anyone in the world, forget Krishna, it's Krishna. If we want to give ourselves to anybody, there's certain things we're going to need to give up ourselves in order to love that person. So similarly, in order to develop that love for Krishna, there are certain things that we naturally will give up. And those things come really just by practicing bhakti. They come naturally. And I think that's something that we could say now in our grihastha life. We've been married now 30 years. And my parents, my mom just left her body a few weeks ago. My parents were married for 62 years. And my mom did not want to die because she did not want to leave my dad. It was just really, really clear. Even though she was 91, it was time for her to leave. She kept like saying, what am I going to do without your father? What am I going to? And it was just amazing to watch that and see. So, and here we are, Ekavira Prabhu and myself, we're married for 30 years, and we do live in the forest. We live in the forest of Nagari. Not that this verse is talking about moving to the forest, and that was an option in Vedic civilization to become detached from ordinary material life. However, we could or could not do that. It just happens that this is where we happen to be out here in this forest. But we see the example of Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada made that choice, T or me, with his wife, and he chose to leave his wife, he didn't go into the forest, right? He came into the concrete jungles of New York City. So that's where he lived his Vanaprastha life, trying to help others to understand Krishna consciousness. So this idea of the forest, again, is an understanding of consciousness. It's an understanding of how we are determined or how we are attracted to wanting to give Krishna consciousness to others and have Krishna consciousness within our own lives. So this should not scare us. These verses, they're not here to scare us. These verses are here simply to really help us to really, this is why Yayati took the time to make up the story with his wife, help us to understand. Yes, this is very natural that as we grow in Krishna consciousness, as we have the support of those persons that are really wanting to love more, to practice love more in their life, then it's very natural that certain things that causes misery, we want to give them up. It's not rocket science, it's not something to be afraid of. And so Ekavira Prabhu and myself, like I said, we've been married for 30 years. And certainly we were talking about this last night. Whoa, there's some things we still got to give up as we aspire to be Vanaprastha. For example, for us, the simplicity, right? The simplicity of what life means at a certain point, at a certain stage of growth. It means not having so many things. It means just being, simple, eating simple, living simply. These are all a part of just growing as a human being, growing in love of God. We naturally start developing more of a desire to please the Lord than a desire to just please ourselves. And so, so this Vanaprastha, Prabhupada says, he says many things in order to help our consciousness. In this verse, we heard Vanaprastha, they generally lament about their past family. And so as I was taking care of my mom and watching her die, leave her body, I happened to be able to do a lot of the rites with her and watch her through those last days. And I saw that the most difficult thing for her to have let go in her consciousness was her attachment to my father. It wasn't to us, the kids. It was to my father. And I could see my father would sleep there every night in this hospice with her. He was also, and that's fine. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying there was no consciousness of how Krishna, God, is in the center of their life. And that's what all of these ashrams are for, to help us to really have Krishna in the center of our lives. And then death will not be as painful as it can be, because ultimately the whole process of bhakti is helping us to prepare for death. This is the process. And so my favorite person talking about this topic of Vanapras is Jayadvaita Swami. Because Jayadvaita Swami,
Talking about one that's expert in cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, he's totally expert. He knows exactly what button to push and who's going to get triggered. However, if we go beyond that and we hear what he's saying, we really hear what he's saying. He's actually very caring, because he's giving his time as a sannyasi to help us to understand. Look, there are things that you can do to help you to become, more attached to Krishna and less attached to sense gratification.
Yes, and Srila Prabhupada expressed, and going back to the point of consciousness, in one of the lectures he was expressing it, it's the important aspect of these ashrams is to understand in every ashram we must put Krishna in the center of our lives. And he was expressing that, the Mahajans, Narada is a brahmachari, Lord Brahma, Grahasta, Shiva's Grahasta, the Kumaras are brahmacharis, Kapila brahmachari. So it doesn't matter whether brahmachari, household, or sannyas. It's important to try to become the confidential servant of the Supreme Lord. And there are many examples, not only in the scriptures, but in our modern day lives. So many devotees, those disciples of Srila Prabhupada who were exemplary, actually from the very, from the inception of their marriages, in many cases, they were vanaprasthas throughout their whole married life, like Vaisheshika Prabhu, who was, they didn't have children, and their whole lives was engaged in, service to others. Persons that were very dear to us, like Burjan Prabhu and Jagatarini. They're pretty much like Grahastas in name only, because their whole lives have been engaged in the service of others. And Burjan Prabhu, a quote unquote Grahasta, is such an exemplary devotee that persons of all ashrams, including sannyasis, go to him to actually get deeper insights about especially Srimad Bhagavatam, exemplary Grahasta and Vanaprastha. And
him and his wife, both, Jagatarini and Mataji, they're both dedicated. They're both very, eloquent. They're both, serving Srila Prabhupada in such a way that they exemplify for us that how, our connection with household life is meant for actually helping others.
Yes.
And it's meant for us dovetailing all of our material desires in service to Krishna. And
I remember one of these questions came up in a retreat we were having with His Grace Bhagavatam Prabhu, and he was expressing it. Srila Prabhupada, I believe it was in Japan and China. Anyway, he was asking him about the Vanaprastha ashram and everything, and he said, and Grihastha ashram, and Srila Prabhupada said, the Grihastha ashram can be so encompassing that we can actually forget the purpose of life. However, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that we can become Krishna conscious at any stage of life, in any of the ashrams. So the purpose of the ashrams is to become Krishna conscious And so that means to keep Krishna in the center. Otherwise, we can become entangled. And so.
Yeah, in some ways that we can practice doing that, no matter what ashram we're in. Of course, in the Vanaprastha ashram, it's, it comes also with age. We after practicing Krishna consciousness for many years, then it becomes a natural part of, I believe, the human existence, I believe, to want to have less and do less in terms of material activities. We've seen that in our own life. We've seen that unfold, where whatever material desires we may have, they have certainly been minimized just simply by engaging in the process of Krishna consciousness. One of the things that is the focus is sex life. This is Yayati. This was his attachment, his deep attachment. Prabhupada says in this purport was to women and sex, and just the nature of the body, just how the body is made, and just the process of Krishna consciousness will assist someone to become less and less interested in just enjoying sex for just to enjoy. Prabhupada already gave us that training anyway in Grihastha life, that sex is meant for procreation. And for many, it is a training. We call this the hot potato, and you can find this in our Grihastha book called, what's that book?
The Grihastha Vision Teams book. It's called the hot potato.
The article is called the hot potato. I recommend you all read it because it is a hot potato, the sex topic. And the fact is that sex can keep somebody very miserable, if that's the only focus, if there's not a focus of utilizing that activity for service to Krishna, then it's an activity that just keeps one miserable. You end up being jealous, envious, and so many different things that come from sex life that's not so attractive. So anyway, it's not that we're saying there's anything wrong with sex life. However, what we're saying is as the body ages, that desire becomes less and less. Horace Prabhupada said,
engaging in Krishna consciousness.
when we're engaged in Krishna consciousness.
Primarily chanting the holy names and engaged in the introspective process.
Yes.
Because this particular desire just doesn't go away on its own. We can, because Srila Prabhupada gives many examples, and we've seen it in our own, in our own experiences in the world, and how persons, as they get older, they still have this desire. Even though the body changes, there's still the desire is there, desire in the mind. And, the Avanti Brahmana speaks about, how this particular desire and our happiness and suffering comes from the mind. And so we won't go into that. But
yeah, we'll just share these little points of how we have learned that things that have helped us in this mood of where we don't say we're vanaprasthas because we're aspiring vanaprasthas. However, we understand the value and the importance of the principle of letting go. We do understand that principle.
And we've been aspiring for about 30 years.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I would say. We've been aspiring to be Vanapras in the sense of, we were trained by sannyasi. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he personally trained us, myself, I personally got trained by him from the day I joined the movement until he left his body. And so I was always under his care. I was always trained like a sannyasi. And when he was leaving his body, I remember he said to Srila Radhanath Maharaj, Radhanath Swami, I've been training her to be a sannyasi. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is how our life has been. It's always been a life of service. It's always been a life of because we didn't have children. It's always been a life of learning how to become free from material desires that are not nurturing us in love of Krishna, those desires. So simply, a couple of things, simplify life. So we really endeavor to simplify our lives. We try to do that as has been shared by, personalities that understand this Vanapras ashram, is we try to eat things in the mode of goodness. We try to not have unnecessary things around us. We try to minimize, the things that are unnecessary. We have simple cars. We don't have although my mother did give me a Lexus. So I do have that car, but it was given to me at service. This is not our dwelling, is our spiritual master's house. We live in his house and we take care of his house. His house is like a museum. Like Henry Prabhu, he has like a museum. And his home is like a museum, totally like a museum. And he has sadhus living there with him all the time. So yeah, make our dwelling simply for service to Krishna. We've certainly increased our sadhana now that we're not as actively involved in, service at the temple as much as we used to be. Now we can take more time to do things like this, give classes and, share Krishna consciousness and, as Ekavira said, introspect.
And in a nutshell, the Vanapras ashram is considered to be retired life, and retired life in Krishna consciousness is really like a joke. Retired life in Krishna consciousness, it's an oxymoron. It's, because retired life in Krishna consciousness, there's really no such thing as that.
Yeah.
And there is this principle of giving up family life. But when one engages in the service of the Lord and tries, even with a little effort, in the case of Vraja, Lila, and I, is trying simply to put Krishna in the center and trying to please our Guru Maharaj and reach out to others. It's no question of giving up anything, because, we have 3 children, but in our Vanapras life, we have so many children, so to speak, because Krishna has arranged for us to be used in some way as instruments to assist others in their Krishna consciousness. So there's, it's really an expansion of our lives, because we are actually becoming more of a part of Srila Prabhupada's family, becoming a part of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's family, becoming a part of Krishna's family.
So with love, we invite you, if you have something to share. We see that the time is gone. We don't know where it's gone, because this topic is so sweet. It's so sweet to talk about. I love talking about, renunciation in Krishna consciousness, because it's, the words that have been used in the past is so discouraging. And so we want to transform that. We want to change that. We want devotees, we want people to know, look, this is a beautiful process. Every stage is so beautiful. So if there's any comments from anyone.
Yeah, we can see how beautiful Krishna consciousness is. Your example. Thank you very much. Okay, devotees, it's kind of over time, but still, if you can stay with us, please stay and ask your question or comment.
We apologize for going over time.
We always do.
Yes.
Okay, so if there isn't, we're going to leave you with this last instruction from Srila Prabhupada. This is from the Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, actually, to help us to practice Krishna consciousness. Nectar of Instruction, sorry. What is important for us is to have enthusiasm, no matter what ashram we're in, to be confident in the fact that Krishna loves us, to be patient in the process, to understand that we have the loving association of so many beautiful and wonderful devotees to assist us in this process. So we can be patient. We want to act according to religious principles, which we do because we have Srila Prabhupada's amazing books to help us, as well as those representatives that are exemplary. to give up association of non-devotees. This is what helps us to develop more love of Krishna and to get away from those persons that increases material desires, and to follow the footsteps of the teachers, the previous acharyas. Prabhupada has laid it out for us. We don't have to worry about anything. So we just do these things. And yeah, this month of Kartik, pray to Srimati Radharani, and surely Radharani will help us to gently take away the material desires, gently take them away. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Dear devotees, look at these bright faces. This is what Krishna consciousness does to you over time. You'll become like Ekavira Prabhu and like Vraja Lila Prabhu. This is a success. That's what Krishna consciousness does. Thank you so much, Prabhus, for sharing Krishna consciousness with us, for cultivating us so nicely. We are your cucumbers. Please cultivate us further. We need that.
Haribo.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, and we're so grateful to be a part of the Bhakti Center family.
And we're in process. We're in process.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful day, everybody. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
And the process is beautiful, everyone. Haribo.
Hare Hare.